her name on the video, so thank you very much for suggesting it. So Debbie Wolfe was 28 years old when she died on Christmas Day of 1985. She worked as a nurse in a local veterans hospital, and she owned a cabin in the woods where she lived with her 2 dogs. And she had just started a new relationship. This microphone is really close to my mouth. Let's try that. Okay. The other way around. Yeah, okay. She had a very close relationship with her mom, like a very fun, kind of teasing each other relationship. For her mom's 50th birthday, Debbie got a meal stripper for her party. And that Christmas, Debbie had gotten her mom like a male and a female novelty doll with like working parts and everything. So they just had a really great mother-daughter relationship. So that Christmas Day, Debbie took off for her shift at the hospital. And with the present that her mother had gotten her, which was a giant stuffed unicorn. But sadly, that funny moment was the last time that her mother would ever see Debbie. So she went to work. She wished all of her colleagues a Merry Christmas, and at the end of her shift, in the afternoon, she went home to her cabin, to her 2 dogs. And her cabin is located about 100 yards away from the main road near a pond, and it's about 4 miles outside of Fayetteville, I guess the city that she was from. So no one heard from her that night, and the next morning on December 26th, she didn't show up for work. Now, Debbie she had missed at most maybe a few hours of work in her entire life. She had never missed a day of work. She was really diligent, and she was always on time. So her co-workers called her at home, but she didn't pick up, and they then called her mother. But so her mother got really worried because she also hadn't heard from Debbie yet, and she called a family friend to drive up to the cabin together and see if they could find her. So when they arrived, they noticed that there were a bunch of empty beer cans lying around the yard, and that Debbie's dogs were running around outside unsupervised. And Debbie would never do that. She would always make sure that she was there when her dogs were outside, and the dogs also hadn't been fed in a while. When she entered the cabin, she saw that several of Debbie's personal items were scattered across the floor. She couldn't find Debbie anywhere in the house, but she did find her purse stuffed in the corner of her waterbed. It looked almost like someone had been trying to hide it. So she checked her answering machine, and when she pressed play, she heard an unfamiliar male voice, and the message said, "Hey Deb, missed you here at work today. Just wondering how you're doing. If you're able to give me a call up here at the ward, I'm at this extension, or give me a call at home tonight. You've been out a lot of days. You made me worried when you missed another one. I just want to make sure you're okay. Bye." Now this message sounds nice and like someone is just concerned, but it really creeped out her mother because it was a voice that she didn't recognize, and she was really confused by his message because he said that she hadn't, that he missed her for a couple of days already, when she's, like I said, at the most she missed a few hours of work, and that was that day when she didn't show up. Her colleagues confirmed that she was in work the day before, so she didn't understand the message at all. So they started searching the yard, her and the family friend that she brought. And I think his name was Kevin. Yeah. And they didn't find anything. They searched the yard and like the bank of the pond, like around the pond, and they didn't find anything. So basically they called the police. And the responding officer came along and brought a bloodhound with him. Now her mother tells him that they searched the house and the yard and around the pond, and for some reason he assumed that they had searched inside the pond, even though they clearly didn't have the equipment to do that. He assumed they had. So he does a search of the property, but also comes up with nothing. And the police officer said that they can't organize a full-scale search until Debbie's been missing for 3 days. So on December 27th, after still not having heard from Debbie, her stepfather goes back to the cabin to feed the dogs. And he finds a short-sleeved nurse's uniform on the kitchen floor. And it was one of Debbie's. Now, it's unclear whether it was not there before or whether it was missed before. However, people debate that given the fact that her mother searched the cabin thoroughly, she would have noticed her uniform lying on the kitchen floor. So a lot of people think it wasn't there before, but we don't know that. So 5 days after her disappearance, a full search is launched. Now, assuming again that they had already searched the pond, they didn't bring any divers to the scene. The bloodhounds nor the police department were able to find any clue as to where Debbie might be. But her mother wasn't satisfied with the thoroughness of the search and thought that even if they had had the means to search the pond, the police should still have done it anyway, and I agree. I mean, you can't rely on civilians to do a proper search. Like, never mind the fact that they expected them to basically dredge a pond. If my friend was missing and I said to police, oh, I already searched that area, I would hope that they say to me, that's really good, little girl, but we're gonna do it again because we're professionals. Like, that's what I would expect them to do. And they just were like, they said they searched the pond, so we're not gonna do it. Like, that is just beyond me. So on January 1st of 1986, Debbie's mom hires the family friend Kevin and his friend Doug to search the pond. Now, almost immediately after diving into the water, Doug said that he saw 2 sets of footprints indented into the thick mud on the bottom of the pond. And next to it, there appeared to be drag marks. So he followed the marks, and there he found Debbie's body. It was inside an oil barrel. And this is where it just becomes weird. So an autopsy revealed that she had almost no water in her lungs, and that she showed no other signs of drowning. She had some abrasions on her fingers, like she was fighting with someone or something. But other than that, there were no signs of foul play on her body. Now, the police theorized that she accidentally fell into the water on the night of the 25th, but there were no signs of bloating on her body. First of all, there were no signs of drowning, right? So she couldn't have fallen into the pond alive because she didn't drown. And there was no bloating on the body. So the coroner decided that she hadn't been in the water that long before she was found, at least not a week. And that she was placed there after she had already died. So Debbie's mother hired a private investigator who also agreed that Debbie's body could not have been in the water since the 25th. They had an open casket funeral for her. That's how well her body was preserved. Also, there were no alcohol or drugs found in her system, so it would be extremely unlikely that she would fall into the pond and not be able to get back out. It wasn't that deep of a pond. And yet, police ruled her death a tragic accident. So, the coroner ruled it as undetermined because he couldn't find exactly what killed her. Only that she didn't drown, but he couldn't tell whether it was foul play or accidental, or he couldn't tell what exactly killed her. Now, police completely ignored the fact that she was found in a barrel that would have had to have been placed there. They ignored the fact that her body had not been in the water for the entire duration of her disappearance. In fact, they claimed that the barrel didn't exist, that it was possibly her jacket that had balloon also remembers seeing the barrel, but the day after, when the police returned to investigate the scene, the barrel had disappeared. For some reason, it wasn't taken in as evidence on the day that her body was found. So they thought maybe it rolled back into the pond. They searched it again and they didn't find anything. So police just assumed that the barrel never existed, or I don't know if they assumed it or they just did it to close the case faster. They were also unable to locate the footprints and drag marks, so police also dismissed them as non-existing. Now, I have some thoughts on this, so I will come back to that later. A few months later, Debbie's mom gets to investigate the clothes that Debbie was found in. Like, I don't know why it took so long, but it took months before she was able to see them. And to her astonishment, she found that none of the clothes actually belonged to Debbie. Most of them didn't even fit her, and half the clothes were men's clothes. The bra was 3 cups and 2 sizes too big. She was wearing an Indian beaded necklace that didn't belong to her. And it was also found that the short-sleeved nurse's uniform found in the kitchen, although it was one of Debbie's, was not the one she was wearing on the day that she disappeared. Because a coworker remembers spilling coffee on a sleeve. She was wearing a long sleeve uniform that day, and that uniform has not been recovered. Now, also, police found that in her car, the driver's seat was pushed all the way back, when normally it would be pushed all the way forward because Debbie was only 5'3". Semen was also found inside Debbie, but DNA testing wasn't really a thing in the 80s. And they said that the swab has since been lost. So with all the technology we have these days to do DNA testing, they can't on this case because they lost the swab. So that leads us to the voicemail message. Now, he said that she had missed work for days when it's clear that she had never missed work. So was this a weird mistake? Or was he the killer, and was he trying to throw off police with his message? Police found that the voice belonged to a man who volunteered at the Veterans Hospital, who had taken a special interest in Debbie. She coordinated the volunteers. So he had made it clear to Debbie that he wanted to be more than friends, and Debbie said that friends is all she could offer, that she had a boyfriend. And family and friends knew of this volunteer's feelings for Debbie, but police said that they investigated him and that they cleared him. There was a second volunteer who had also taken a special interest in Debbie, and he was a lot more forward. He really creeped Debbie out. He had a long history of psychiatric illness, and she had told him multiple times that she had a boyfriend, but he wouldn't let up. So he was also investigated by police, but he had an alibi. However, he refused to take a polygraph test. Now, police cleared him, but a few days later, he skipped town and left the state, which I do find slightly suspicious. And that's really all there is on this case. So, regarding the footprints and the drag marks in the mud, as I said, police didn't find any. And what they said, and apparently this is true, is that there wasn't so much mud on the bottom of the pond as there was moss, and it wouldn't have been possible to make footprints or drag marks. So there's 2 things to this. One, well, I said there's actually just one thing to this. If those marks weren't there, then how did Doug know so fast where to find her body? There's very little known about this Doug guy. It doesn't, nobody really seems to know how close of a family friend he was. And no one seems to really find him suspicious. I don't know if I'm the only one who finds him suspicious. I don't know if he was investigated and he was cleared. But I find it very odd that he almost immediately after going into the pond found these drag marks and then followed them and found Debbie. I completely think that police dropped the ball on this and that they definitely closed this investigation way too soon. lied that it's not possible to have drag marks on that type of soil, one of the two is lying. Either Doug is lying or the police is lying, and it's really hard to find out what happened. A lot of people think that this volunteer did it, or maybe even two people did it, that they killed Debbie, and that they basically took her, and after the scene had been searched, that they then decided to dump her in the pond. It's not clear at this point whether she was alive in the days before they found her. They just know that she wasn't in the water for that long, but they don't know exactly when she died. So it's a very strange case because it's been solved, but it hasn't. I think we can all agree that it hasn't been solved correctly. Like, there's no way that this was an accidental drowning. And also, there is very little to go on. Like, aside from the voicemail from the guy, and police cleared him, there is nothing, at least not that I could find in her life, that really indicated who could have possibly done this. She didn't seem to have a bad relationship with anyone. No one seemed to dislike her. Aside from the creepy guys who took a strange interest in her, there's not really any indication as to what could have happened to her, so it's really strange. I think especially the fact that semen was found inside her. It didn't say anywhere if there were signs of rape, but she did have a boyfriend. Now, again, I didn't find this in my research, but I'm assuming that they questioned him and that he wasn't with her that day. Or he would have just told them, yeah, it's probably mine, but that's not the case. So I don't know. I find this a very fascinating case because there's really very little theories out there. So that was that.